Hey, good evening, Midwest Survivor, time for dinner chat. So first off, I'd like to say thank you to everybody that is watching the YouTube channel. I know it may not seem like much, but if you could just click subscribe or click the bell or the thumbs up, just to let you may not have to like me, but at least if you like the content, give a thumbs up, click the bell, hit subscribe. So we're gonna go into part two of unhealthy love versus healthy love. And this is a topic that I put a lot of thought into, and I realized that is very, very important. So as I'm cooking dinner here, it's something that I wanted to talk about tonight because so many people out there are affected by unhealthy love, and they don't know what healthy love really is. They don't know what it looks like. They don't know what the signs are, what it is. So I just wanted to go over part two of unhealthy love versus healthy love. So not every relationship that feels intense is healthy. And sometimes what feels like love is actually control, fear, emotional dependence, manipulation, gaslighting, and the list goes on and on and on. Toxic behavior. So here's some of the things that unhealthy love says, either directly through the mouth or through actions or whatever. So unhealthy love says, if you love me, you would do what I want, or you would be blank. Another example of unhealthy love is, you owe me because of everything I've done for you, or you owe me because I'm your parent, or you owe me because of this. When somebody says they owe you, they don't respect you. They are using guilt and manipulation to control you. That phrase, you owe me, is an automatic guilt trip or an automatic sense of manipulation. I can say honestly that my parents have done this. Relationships have done this. Family members of people that I was in relationships have done this. My favorite one is, I'm your dad and you need to do what I say. Well, first off, your actions need to line up with your words, and your words need to line up with your actions. And whenever those two are askew, respect is lost. Another one is, don't talk to them. They don't care about you. Well, here's the thing. How do you know what's going on in their mind and in their heart? If somebody is telling you to stay away from somebody, the only major reasons to stay away from somebody is, one, they have self-destructive habits, drugs, alcohol, physically abusive, verbally abusive, whatever. Or they are a danger to themselves or to other people, or, they've hurt children, and we can all understand what that means. Those are reasons to stay away from somebody. But don't talk to them. They don't care about you. You have to look at a person's actions to know whether or not they actually care about you or not. Another one that you might hear often is, well, you're too sensitive, or you're blowing this out of proportion, or you're just talking about everything that's negative. You just talk about everything that's a problem. Well, no. Sometimes a person has to vent things. Sometimes a person has built up so much pain and so much turmoil and so much confusion that they have to let it all out. And it's not being sensitive. It's not being negative. It's just expressing concern for situations that don't make any sense. And then the last one of what unhealthy love says, you're the reason I'm unhappy. And I've heard this a lot. I've heard this a lot from family members, and I've heard this a lot from a previous spouse. You're the reason I'm unhappy. This is your fault. I feel this way because of you. I did this because of you. Or whatever the case may be. The real reason is they are not accepting responsibility or accountability for how they feel. They're putting the blame and the guilt on you. and expecting you to carry that baggage. Well, you don't have to carry that baggage. You don't have to feel that guilt. You don't have to feel that, take on that shame, because that's not your problem. If they feel that way, that is on them. And you don't have to take on that shame or that guilt or that manipulation, that manipulated mindset. You can say, hey, no, this is your problem. You're the one that feels this way. You're the one that's going through this. You can say, I love you, I care about you, but this is not my problem. I'm not guilty of this. This is coming from you. You need to deal with it, and I will do whatever I can to help you, but this is your problem. So here's some things that healthy love says. I respect your choices. I respect your decisions. I may not agree with it. I may not like it, but I will respect what you decide. That is totally in line. That is totally permissible, because I have a different mind. Somebody else has a different mind. We may not always agree, but we can respectfully disagree and go along and go down different paths and say, you know what, I don't like your choices. I don't like what you're doing, but I love you. I care about you. I will respect you, because even though I disagree with you. That is perfectly normal. One of the great stories that illustrates this, and it's a lesson my grandpa taught me. When my grandpa was a young man, there was a lady in the church that they went to that was going to give $1,000. The church needed some outside work, and her and the pastor wanted it done a certain way, and she said, well, I'll give $1,000 if it's done my way. Well, some people got together and they didn't like the way the lady was going to do it, and her and the pastor said, well, if it's not done my way, I'm not going to give the $1,000, which in the late 40s, early 50s was an incredible sum of money. Well, enough of the church people got together and said, listen, this is our church. Let's do it right. Let's do it the way it needs to be done. How about we do it this way? And nobody got mad. Nobody got butthurt. Nobody left the church. Nobody said, well, because you didn't do it my way, I'm just gonna leave the church. They were mature about it. They said they all came to an agreement about it, and it actually ended up being a better situation for the church than what it anticipated for. The lady didn't give the money, but nobody was hurt. Nobody got butt hurt. Nobody's feelings got hurt, and the building ended up looking better than what it did. You may not have to agree, but you can respect the choice that other people make. And that's a very, very hard thing to do, because everybody spends so much time on their emotions and their feelings and how this affects them. Well, sometimes people make decisions and choices that don't affect you. And here's a news flash. It's okay. It's all right. It doesn't have to affect you. You can live your life and let them live their life and nobody get hurt. So another one is, let's work through this together. Let's talk about this. Let's negotiate about this. Let's try to figure out what we can do to come to some kind of respectful agreement. I cannot tell you how much this is lacking in today's generation. I don't want to force my ideas and theories down other people's throats. And more importantly, I don't want them to force their ideas and their opinions down my throat. I'm a free thinker. I have my own mind. I have my own ideas. The worst thing in the world is when somebody has their own perceptions of you and then tries to force those perceptions and expects you to fit into their mold and their box. And that's not the way we were created and formed. We were created to think for ourselves and have our own ideas and our own thoughts and our own theories, not be a mannequin of what somebody else wants us to be. Let's work through things. Let's talk about things. Let's be reasonable and sensible and compassionate. We may not have to like the choices that people make, but we have to be respectful of people. And we may not have to agree with them, but we have to be respectful of them. This last one's kind of a double-edged sword. Healthy love says your feelings matter. Well, I agree with that, but I don't agree with that. So let me give you my 2 points of view. I agree with that in that feelings do matter. You don't want to be hurtful, spiteful, vengeful, manipulative, cruel. You don't want to be that way. Feelings do matter in that aspect. However, if somebody is doing something that is harmful to themselves or harmful to other people, and especially that last one, if they're doing something that's harmful to other people that you are directly connected to, if you care about that person, you'll just say, hey, listen, I don't really like what you're doing, and what you're doing is very bad, and I understand that you may have some feelings on this issue, but hurting them is not going to make you feel better. And sometimes a kind, direct confrontation is the best way to deal with a situation like that. The other thing is making sure that you let them know that you care about them, but you don't agree with what they're doing. In that, hey, listen, I understand you've got feelings towards this person, but let's back the truck up a little bit and let's reevaluate how we need to go about this, because I don't want to see your feelings get hurt, but more importantly, I don't want to see their feelings get hurt either. So let's try to figure out if there's a way around this to where nobody gets hurt. Now, sometimes that's unavoidable. Sometimes conflict is just the inevitability of life, and sometimes some people you just can't reason with. And you've got to be able to recognize that and say, hey, listen, this situation is entirely too screwed up. I've got to get out of this before it completely radiates me with toxicity. So sometimes walking away is the best thing when it comes to people's feelings. Healthy love says, I trust you. Now, trust, I'm going to say this, and I may get some flack for it, but I don't care. Trust is not given like a participation trophy. You have to earn trust. Trust has to be earned. Trust has to be earned through time. And just because you're related to somebody's your family member, somebody is your parent, does not mean that you have to trust them. Sometimes parents are the worst violators of that trust, and because they're your parents, they use manipulation on you to say, well, you're my child, you're supposed to trust me. No, if they enable somebody that's abusing you, you do not need to trust that parent. If they are using financial abuse to control you, you do not need to trust that parent. If they are yelling and screaming and belittling you and emotionally and verbally and mentally abusive, you do not have to trust that parent. If you have told that parent things in trust and they have betrayed that trust, you do not have to trust that parent. And if they use terms like guilt and shame and manipulation and toxicity and are narcissistic, you do not have to trust that parent. But trust is earned. Trust is a beautiful thing when it's healthy and pure and right. But when it's broken, it takes forever to get it back, and sometimes it never comes back. So, and the last one is, I want you to have healthy relationships with others. This is what every child should hear from their parent. I want you to have healthy relationships with your friends, with members of the opposite gender. I want you to have healthy relationships with the people you work with. I want you to have healthy relationships with whoever, however, with your students. If a parent or a friend or whatever is trying to manipulate you into having unhealthy relationships, toxic relationships, narcissistic relationships, codependent relationships, those are people you do not need to pair up with in your life, and you need to separate yourself from, plain and simple. So, here's some things unhealthy love creates. Unhealthy love creates anxiety, feelings of anxiousness, tightness in your chest. Anxiety and the symptoms of a heart attack can be hand in hand with each other. Anxiety can also cause headaches, migraines, upset stomachs. For women, it can also cause cycle disruptions. sleep pattern disruptions, all kinds of things. Anxiety is a horrible anguish upon the mind and upon the body and upon the emotions. Walking on eggshells, the feeling that somebody's out to get you, the feeling of dread and turmoil, the feeling of doom, walking on eggshells, thinking that everybody's going to yell at you and hate you and scream at you. You know, those are examples of walking on eggshells. Guilt. People use guilt and manipulation all the time to control you. Fear of conflict. Wanting to just get along with people for the sake of getting along, no matter who it hurts, no matter what it costs, and no matter what it costs you. You know, conflict is inevitable. This is life. You know, sometimes conflict is inevitable. And there's no reason to be afraid of it, because sometimes you need that conflict to get unhealthy people out of your life. Loss of identity. This is one I've struggled with, because I was trying to be everything to everybody. I was trying to be everything to a spouse, to my parents, to church members, to people I worked with. And yet I was losing who I was as a person. And finally, it just came to a breaking point, and I realized that I didn't know who I was as a man and as a person, because I had lost friends and hobbies and the things that made me. But as I've been doing these snack shorts and dinner chats with Midwest Survivor, I'm beginning to find out who I really am and who I am as a person. You know, and when you lose that identity, it takes a long time to get it back. But believe me, and let me implore you, you can get who you are back. So here's some things that healthy love creates. It creates a sense of safety. Not only a place of safety, but a mindset of safety, a heart set of safety. You feel safe around people. You feel safe talking to people. You feel safe, you know, being yourself and being open. You don't have to, for lack of a better word, be a turtle and live in a shell or live in an island. You can be who you are and feel safe about it. Another thing that healthy love creates is trust. You begin to trust yourself. You begin to trust people around you. You begin to trust, you know, your environment, your surroundings, the places you go, the people you talk to. The next one is growth. You begin to grow intellectually. You begin to grow emotionally. You know, growth is very important. If we're not growing, we're not living, and if we're not living, we are dying, and we are in danger of being erased. You know, we got to grow up here in our minds. We got to grow up here in our hearts. But more importantly, we got to grow as people. It's important that we form new relationships with people, healthy relationships with people. And more importantly, we eliminate the relationships that are toxic and negative and inhibit our growth. We want relationships with people that aid our growth, not inhibit our growth. Peace, you know, peace of your mind, peace of your heart, a place of peace. You know, you don't want to come home to a place that's full of turmoil and strife and arguing and screaming and yelling, and more importantly, you know, fear of the unknown, not knowing what you're going to walk into. My uncle always made the joke. He said, I always knew if it was a good day at home or not, because if I walked in the back door and took my boots off and my boots didn't come flying back at me, I knew it was a good day. You know, if your boots come flying out at you, that's not a peaceful environment. So, you know, place of peace is very important. And then the last one, and this goes hand in hand, the freedom to be yourself. You know, you need to have a freedom to be yourself means having hobbies and being who you are, doing the things that you do, and more importantly, stretching and growing yourself to be the best person that you can be. Because life doesn't call us to be the same from the time we're born until the time we die, but we are supposed to constantly grow and evolve and become better versions of ourselves. So, Midwest Survivor, real love does not require you to lose yourself, to keep somebody else happy. Healthy love helps you become more of who you are and who you are created to be, and more importantly, becoming the better version of yourself that you need to be. So if you've experienced the difference between healthy and unhealthy love, share your thoughts in the comments. Click the like, click the bell. You know, I want to have more conversations just like this about recovery and healing and healthy relationships. So be sure to click the bell, be sure to click like. Midwest Survivor for Dinner Chat. As always, eat healthy, be healthy, grow healthy, and you will stay healthy. Y'all have a good night. Take care.